Hey guys, it's Hunt4Games, and if your experience was anything like mine, you spent a ton of time in the 60s in Final Fantasy XI. You just finished off the artifact, each level is like 25 to 30,000 experience points, camps weren't that great prior to Otter gone. I mean, it took a while, but that wasn't so bad because at 60 you were like strong enough to be a force to be reckoned with for a lot of stuff in the game. It was a great time to take a breather, help out some friends, level some subs, and my personal favorite, hunt Notorious Monsters. Because man, there were some awesome Notorious Monsters in this level range. I mean, check out part 1 of the 60s if you haven't already, because it has some of my favorite boat trip terrors, famous for reminding low-level players that boats were not a safe space. And the end of this list provided one of my all-time favorite pieces of gear, something I used for years across multiple jobs, so let's get right into it. So another not-so-safe space was Yoder Jungle, which came as a surprise to like no one. I mean, the Tomberries alone supported general healthy fear of the area, but as a summoner, I spent a little more trekking time through here than most people would in the 60s. I was heading off to Ifrit's Cauldron all the time to spend the next 6 hours praying a bomb would explode in my face for like minimal amounts of experience. Yay. So I had a healthy fear of the area throughout the level ranges, even when it was supposedly safe. This is why one day when I was walking out to gain a measly 1,500 experience from a couple volcanic gases, I saw a giant treant in the area, and I'd never seen a treant before in Yoder Jungle. Ever. I was like fairly hesitant for all of like 2 seconds before I attacked it because it was a Notorious Monster. I mean, seriously, I was just like, I gotta get it. So I fired off Carbuncle in hopes that it wasn't that tough. Unfortunately, it kinda was. It ripped through a Carby fast enough that I barely had time to get away and summon another one. And this went back and forth for a while with me barely getting a Carbuncle out, getting away, barely getting another one out, until it finally did get a lucky hit on me and I went down. I went down like a sack of bricks. By the time I gotten back, it was long gone. Somebody had presumably killed it, passing by, going to Ifrit's Cauldron. It sucked. But it wasn't until later that I realized it wasn't even worth the attempt because all it drops is the sunlight pole. It adds a regen effect in sunny weather. Yay. This is just one of those pieces of gear that as far as I know, there's really no purpose for. I mean, 1 HP a tick regen is nothing on a crappy weapon that you're never going to use. What is that? But to this day, he's one of the most memorable monsters in my mind. Both because he killed me, I mean, he totally kicked my ass, and because he just was so random. It was just awesome coming across him out of nowhere in an area that I'd been through countless times, having never heard of him, never seen him, and hoping he had some rare, incredible drops that could make me rich beyond my wildest dreams. Of course he didn't, he had this worthless staff, but like, you know, that's the dream. So that was the Woodland Sage, and it may be the first time that many of you are hearing about him on this video, so congratulations, the Woodland Sage sucks, there's no reason you'd ever have to hunt him down. But I bring him up to set the bar as low as possible for worthless equipment, just so I could break that bar and go even lower with the next guy. Taizajin. I definitely pronounced that wrong. Since starting this series, more people have brought up this idiot NM and his drop than I would have ever expected. Because he dropped the Spelunker's hat. The Spelunker's hat was awful in all the ways that the optical hat was great. It had the exact same stats, but negative. It actually subtracted from your proficiency in accuracy, evasion, and ranged accuracy. But to get why it was such a letdown, we have to go into the Taizajin a little bit more. First of all, he was a Heck Dies, or Thousand Eyes, whatever you want to call him, which is one of the more annoying creatures in Final Fantasy XI, in my opinion. Maybe that's just because I faced them so often, but I hated these guys. Death Ray ignores shadows, which was a pain. There weren't that many things that could just damage you through your protective veil of Utsuzemi, but this thing would just do it. But the real dangers here were obviously Hexai and Petrogaze. Sure, both are avoidable gaze attacks, but if you screwed up even once, you could basically seal your fate of doom, death, and destruction. So we used to fight these things all the time for the Hakutaku eyes to sell, which together would form, I think, the pop item for the optical hat. So you could sell them for a decent amount. Because they were hard to kill, kind of in random areas across Vanadil, they aren't like easy to get to, the drop rate wasn't that great, they were kind of like avoided. So it was a nice little niche market for us, and how we made money for a while was selling the different Hakutaku eyes. It actually was a lot of fun. So we practiced keeping our eyes out for the gaze moves and spinning around as fast as possible to avoid them, but you know, every once in a while it just wouldn't work out. You might eventually miss one. Or you try to turn and then you accidentally turn back. That happened all the time. Petrogaze obviously will make you a sitting duck for its strong petrification, while Hexai was one of the worst paralyzes in the game. I mean, seriously, this would prevent you from basically doing anything. If you ever tried to paralinea yourself through a Hexai, you know how bad this is. This is not a Valkyrie Dunes goblin casting Paralyze on you. This is utterly crippling Paralyze that destroyed your chances of success. Now, I bring that up to basically set the stage for that this was a level 60 to 63 Notorious Monster, Heck Dies monster. It wasn't super easy. It was, in fact, kind of hard. Casting like Faraga 2, Quake, all that fun stuff on top of its usual problems. And on top of that, it had one of those ridiculous spawn windows like in the game between like 24 hours and like 72. I think this thing could go as far as 3 days without popping. That's absurd. All this adds up to is that, man, this guy probably dropped something really incredible, like life-changing incredible. He's so difficult, he's so random, how do I get it? Well, he did drop a Scroll of Refresh, which I mean was kind of expensive back in the day, like a few $100K, so you'd be happy to get it, but it wasn't going to change anybody's Final Fantasy lifestyle. It's not going to make you from poor to richer. You're not going to go on MTV Cribs after getting this. What am I talking about? But other than that, it's just the Spelunkers hat. I mean, this thing spawned arguments. This drops from this huge pain in the ass. It's not just bad, it's detrimental, like really detrimental. I've heard stories of like, oh, there's a BCNM out there that reverses all the effects of your gear, so this thing's like amazing because it's like minus 10 accuracy, so you get plus 10 accuracy, whereas everything else you're actually getting negative stats. But all just rumors. I've never heard of his actual purpose, or if it was just one huge joke from the developers, which is my personal theory. Which does lead into an actually useful Notorious Monster, and one of my favorites. This guy was a spawnable Notorious Monster, so no worries about trying to camp him over anyone else, and his drop was 100%, so it wasn't like you'd be chasing him down for weeks. The pop item was kind of a pain to get, but you could just like slowly farm your way after it. It just had a low drop rate. You'd eventually get it, so you're like, whatever, I'll get it someday. Honestly, he wasn't even that hard to fight, and Temple of Ugalef, where he hung out, was more dangerous naturally than he ever was. I'm talking about Death from Above. Now, if you don't remember this guy, or never had a reason to fight him, you're not alone. I mean, he dropped the Hornet Needle, which is really neat and awesome dagger for very specific things, but about like 90% of the jobs in Final Fantasy XI wouldn't care. It's a dagger. Like everything else in this list, while the NM was in the low 60s, the gear could be equipped at like 48, so it was great for prepping another job that you plan on leveling, which we've already talked about in my last videos. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'd love having the best possible gear I could for like the next job. As a thief, though, I loved the Hornet Needle, and honestly, it wouldn't even last forever. You could probably offhand it up through like the early 60s before you'd probably have an argument that you could swap it out for something better. I mean, a few other jobs could use it and be happy with it. Ninjas would offhand it for a few levels if they already had dagger skill level and really wanted like a low delay offhand weapon. A few other jobs like Red Mage could use it for soloing with end spells. The low delay helped you hit end spells but had decent damage compared to some of the other 150 delay weapons. I mean, there's some cool stuff like that, but for the most part nobody cared. But Thief loved this thing. It was just one of those unique weapons that, while not that exciting, could change how your job played for a few levels while you have it equipped. You'd just be like, I'm so fast, Like I said, I probably got more excited about this than most people, but I worked hard to hunt this guy down and get this dagger to prep for leveling Thief, and that was one of my favorite aspects of the game. I loved having it in the offhand when I'd show up to parties and be like, see, I went the extra mile, check out this GP gaining machine. It was just fun. I loved having gear like that. I loved prepping for the next job and being like, at level 48, I'm going to have that dagger waiting for me, and it was a way to kind of you had goals to set for yourself. And those goals helped you get through those bad parties, those level ranges that were taking a little bit longer than you'd hoped for. It was how you got through the shitty Garland Citadel era and like Crawler's Nest when you didn't have a Red Mage refresh yet, but you're just on that cusp of like running out of MP constantly. That's how you got past that stuff, was you're like, oh, 48, I've got that cool piece of gear waiting. Love this stuff. But anyways, guys, that's it for this week's video of the Notorious Monsters, my favorite Notorious Monsters Final Fantasy XI. This time in the level 60 range. Now, we've got plenty more to go in the level 60 range, so I'm going to keep going with this like 60s series, which is like a small subset of the rest of the series. Let me know in the comments your favorite stories about these three Notorious Monsters and any others that you definitely want to see that are in this level range. I'd love to hear about anybody that actually got the Spelunkers hat and didn't know that was what was going to drop. I'd be really curious to see what your reaction was. I never had this thing because I heard he was so hard to get, and I was like, I'm not going after that thing. But it's, what a weird piece of gear. If you know of a purpose for the Spelunkers hat and its negative gaming attributes, please let me know what that was. I would love to put that myth, that legend to rest and understand what it was for. But I have a feeling there's no purpose. Thanks for sticking around for the end. Next week might be a little tough. I'm away like 4 days this weekend. I'll be back on Wednesday, but then I'm away again on Friday, so we'll see if I can squeeze a video in there. If not, don't worry, I'm still alive, and I'll be back next week, the following week, like the 15th or something. Keep your eyes out for more Final Fantasy 11 videos, and have a good weekend, guys. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, you should totally think about subscribing. I've got videos coming out twice a week, and if you like this one, there's at least a chance you'll like some of the others that are very similar to this, so live dangerously. Let me know what you guys thought about the video in the comments and other videos you'd like to see. And finally, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Huntin for Games to keep up with all the latest stuff. See ya!